Have you ever thought that maybe one of the Bible's most incredible survival stories isn't just about the past? Well, today we're diving into a really fascinating interpretation that sees the book of Esther not just as history, but as a detailed, symbolic roadmap for the end times. So here's the big idea we're exploring: that the book of Esther is basically a symbolic map of future events pointing directly to the end times conflict you read about in the book of Revelation. I know, it's a pretty bold claim, right? So let's really dig in and see exactly how this argument is built. Okay, so before we can even get to the whole prophecy angle, we've got to get our heads around the original story. In the book of Esther, the conflict itself is this high-stakes political thriller, and it's all centered on a terrifying plan for total annihilation. And believe me, the stakes here are astronomical. This wasn't just some idle threat. We're talking about a royal decree stamped with the king's own ring. That's a done deal. It was an order to kill an entire people, every last one of them, across all 127 provinces of this massive Persian empire. It was absolute, and it seemed totally irreversible.
And this is really the key part of the setup, right? The precision. This wasn't a vague, "we're coming for you." No. A specific future date was chosen. It was all legally signed and sealed. The clock was officially ticking, and it looked like there was absolutely no way out.
All right, so we've got the historical stage set. Now, let's pivot. This is where things get really interesting, as we shift from looking at this as just history to seeing it as a prophecy. So, according to the source we're breaking down, this whole story is so much more than what it seems. It argues that every single key element, the villain, the king, the heroine, even the death decree itself, has a direct counterpart in the book of Revelation. It's like watching a play being performed on two stages at the same time, one in ancient Persia and the other on a huge cosmic scale. And this right here? This is the absolute heart of this whole interpretation. A historical event in one single empire is seen as a blueprint, a kind of foreshadowing of a final spiritual battle that's going to span the entire globe. The names and places are different, but the fundamental struggle, it's exactly the same. Okay, so you're probably asking, how on earth do they make that connection? Well, let's get into it. The source draws these really direct lines between the people and the forces in both books, giving each major player in Esther's story a symbolic end times identity. So in this interpretation, Haman being furious at Mordecai for not bowing, that's not just about a bruised ego. It's seen as a mirror image of Satan's big problem. He wants to destroy anyone and everyone who worships God alone. Haman basically becomes the human face of that great spiritual enemy.
And what about the king? King Ahasuerus, the guy who just kind of goes along with this horrific plan? Well, he becomes a symbol for worldly power. The political systems, the governments that Satan uses to get his way on earth. The king is the authority that gives the evil plan its legal teeth. And then you have Queen Esther. This is probably the most powerful parallel. Remember when she says, "If I perish, I perish," as she goes to the king, breaking the law and risking her own life? Her willingness to face death to save her people is seen as a direct reflection of the sacrifice of Christ.
And that brings us to Mordecai. He's the guy who goes from zero to hero, right? He starts out as a humble guy at the gate and ends up as the king's right-hand man. This whole journey is seen as a symbol of the ultimate victory, where Christ, who is faithful through it all, is finally given all power and authority after the enemy is defeated.
Okay, so let's put this all together in one place. It's like a cast of characters for two different plays, but the roles match up. You've got Haman, the accuser, playing the part of Satan. King Ahasuerus, the worldly authority, symbolizes the beast. Esther, the intercessor, represents the sacrifice of Jesus. And Mordecai, who is exalted in the end, symbolizes Jesus taking his rightful throne. Every role in the earthly drama is given this huge cosmic significance.
But wait, it gets even deeper. This whole symbolic reading isn't just about who's who. It reinterprets the central conflict itself, this battle between two opposing royal decrees, as a symbol for the two great covenants of the Bible.
So get this. The argument is that Haman's first decree, the one that says everyone dies, is a symbol for the Old Covenant, the law, which exposes sin and ultimately leads to a death sentence. But then the second decree, the one that doesn't cancel the first but gives the people the right to fight back and live, that symbolizes the new covenant of grace. It doesn't get rid of the law, but it provides the power to overcome death. So you can really see this theological journey laid out in 3 steps. First, you get the law of death. That's Haman's unchangeable decree. That is then met by a sacrificial intervention, Esther risking her life. And that intervention leads to a law of life, the new decree that empowers the people to save themselves. It's a perfect picture of the journey from condemnation to salvation.
So, let's wrap our heads around what this all means. The big takeaway here is that, through this lens, Esther isn't just a story about a brave queen, it's a complete symbolic prophecy of our ultimate salvation. The characters become cosmic figures, the plot twist becomes the shift from the old to the new covenant, and what was supposed to be a day of destruction becomes a day of incredible victory, a foreshadowing of a final triumph.
Wow, so we've just unpacked a really, really intricate way of looking at the book of Esther, and it kind of leaves you with this one big thought-provoking question, doesn't it? When we dig into these ancient texts, where do we draw the line between finding deeper, symbolic meaning and actually seeing the future written in the pages? It's definitely something to think about.